Who decides on greatness?
I know we're in a subjective business.
Is it the audience who applauds in admiration?
But the truth is
it the film critics who sift through thousands of performances to find the few golden nuggets buried in the sand? Or perhaps it's time, rolling on ceaselessly to test each actor and see who is willing to endure.
I'm really in pursuit of greatness.
The ineffable concept of greatness has been on my mind recently. A concept that is both real and not. This thing that artists chase for a lifetime, never knowing if they've achieved it. Every few years, it seems a handful of actors are tagged for observation. Young artists, rising stars, who could be legends if they stay on the right path. But there are some who slip by the watchful eye of critics and award shows. Some artists who, for one reason or another, are not deemed worthy of early onset greatness, waiting in the shadows for someone to look up and say, hold on, have you always been here? One of those actors is Robert Pattinson, and it's time you stop ignoring him. Like most great actors, Robert has a role that most people discovered him in. The first moment the whole world learned the name and realized he was a three-dimensional being. I'm sure there will be Harry Potter fans who swear that this role is Cedric Diggory, and that's fine. You can say that. I don't believe you, but you can say that.
Clap if you care. Clap if you care.
But for the majority of the world, Twilight was that moment. And soon enough, Robert Pattinson would find out the validity of the phrase, first impressions are everything. Despite its massive box office success, gargantuan cult following, and star-studded cast, Twilight was not considered good. There were pockets of praise here and there, but pretty much everyone besides the fan base of primarily young women said it was a terrible film. The Hollywood Reporter criticized the overall tone of Twilight, saying that, over and over again, Hardwick goes for the camp factor. Operas have arias, Twilight has stairs. Nothing in Melissa Rosenberg's fairly intelligent screenplay suggests the need for this much ornate direction. Nor should her two actors, Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson, be condemned to performances that will have girls' dates screaming with laughter. And though this critic, who is, you guessed it, a man—
What? No, dude!
disliked the film overall, Kirk did have some praise. He says, the costumes and decor are always just right, and the actors are exceptionally good. The actors are exceptionally good. I want you to imagine for a moment you're an actor. You've had a few roles here and there, but this project that you've just been cast as the lead in is it. This will be your big break, whether you like it or not. You receive the script, and you crack it open to look at your dialogue, and while being covered in Fenty diamond highlight dust, you have to say, in all seriousness,
This is the skin of a killer, Bill.
do not mistake my humor for disdain of the Twilight script. I love this franchise and its odd mixture of intensely Shakespearean and campy hyper-realism. But for a 21-year-old actor, this script, I recognize, is just a little underwhelming. In which case, you have two options as the actor. Be a professional and give your sincere best performance for this role, or cash a check and phone it in. And though Robert admits he wasn't always the most cooperative on set,
You have to do the opposite of what you're doing now, or you're going to get fired today.
and famously he hated the films during the press tours,
You know, he's one of those guys who'd be like an axe murderer.
he still took the job seriously. I think a lot of people have already judged the film before they have even started shooting us, and I didn't want to be part of a film that was just a cash-in thing. So we tried to take as many risks as we could and tried to make it a little bit more serious than people expect. Making any sort of sci-fi or fantasy language sound realistic is extremely challenging. So the fact that Twilight has even a sliver of indie coming-of-age romance vibes is extremely impressive. The cast took words that no human being could say seriously.
Since when do vampires like baseball?
Well, it's the American pastime. And, there's a thunderstorm coming. It's the only time we can play.
And gave them weight and importance. Robert and Kristen had it especially hard, carrying the franchise at such a young age with very little positive feedback from the industry. It would have been easy to give up after the first film and just say, forget it, if they don't like it, I'm not gonna try, but that's not what happened. And yet, despite overcoming the challenges and traps of a YA fantasy film, to some, Robert Pattinson is still just some teen vampire heartthrob nearly 20 years later. His first major impression on the industry was cute British teenage boy who girls love. And whether you're ready to acknowledge this or not, the world hates anything that teenage girls love. At 12 years old, I was in the trenches defending One Direction against The Wanted on the app that shall not be named. I wore my hair in a side braid because Katniss Everdeen did it. I rocked flannels around my waist during my 5-sauce phase. I am a fangirl through and through. So when I say that the world hates anything teenage girls love, I am not spewing some wild feminist theories. And if you disagree with me, you may just have some internalized misogyny, which is okay! It's not your fault! We just have to unlearn those patriarchal views. And I don't mean to sound antagonistic here, but often when I introduce this idea, I see people's knee-jerk reaction to be all, that's not true, but let me just paint the picture for you. The first Twilight film was made on a budget of $37 million. It grossed over $407 million, meaning this movie made an estimated 1,000% profit. And in case you were wondering, no, it wasn't just the hype of movie number 1. New Moon made $709 million against a $50 million budget. Eclipse, $698 million against a $68 million budget. Breaking Dawn, a combined $1.3 billion against a $263 million budget. The total cost of the franchise is $418 million. The total it made, $3.14 billion. That's a 652.15% profit. If money talks, then this franchise should have been regarded as one of the most successful franchises of the 21st century, competing in the same league as all major superhero films, Harry Potter's, or the Pirates franchise. But the primary difference here, and why it's not spoken about with such high regard, is due to its target audience. And maybe you're thinking at this point, money isn't a factor, Robert was just bad in a horrible piece of garbage fire art. Okay, sure. Let's compare two scenes quickly. In Fast 5, a very sweaty Hobbs rolls up mid-party and threatens to arrest Toretto and Brian. Mind you, he does nothing that an actual cop or federal agent would actually do in terms of presenting a warrant, an extradition order, or reading their Miranda rights. He just demands,
"You turn around and put your hands behind your back."
Which is low-key kinda freaky Hobbs. These two almost kiss just before The Rock delivers this banger.
Your mistake is thinking you got a goddamn choice, boy.
And all of the feds pull out every type of gun you can imagine. Why a federal agent would bring a shotgun to arrest speed racers, I don't know, but this guy did that. But don't worry, Toretto knows how to handle this. He teases The Rock with another smooch on the lips, right before shouting, "This is Brazil," triggering his crew to pull out their various machine weaponry, which gives Brian here a teeny adorable little chuckle. And now the Twilight scene. It's a little more intimate than Fast 5, though again, those boys were on the verge of a kiss session, but it's a similar structure. Bella challenges Edward, asking why he won't turn her, believing it's a fault of her own or that he's lying about something. Edward lets down his guard and reveals the shame he feels toward himself and the guilt he would feel for taking Bella's life.
You believe I have a soul, and I don't. But to risk yours, just for the sake of never having to lose you, that's the most selfish thing I'll ever do.
Yes, I know the script is a bit goofy, but these actors are working it! Robert Pattinson is delivering a technically intelligent performance with atypical language. I can already feel some of you watching this rolling your eyes at me, and I just challenge you to open your mind a bit. Robert is giving us a restrained, understated confession of love, vulnerable and delicate and tentative. There is a reason young women resonated with these movies, and it must have been easy for critics to write cheap, misogynistic takedown pieces saying it only did well because girls were suffering from some obsessive Jonas Brothers disorder. I don't have time to dismantle my entire belief system about how young girls are disregarded like wet paper towels, despite being a major influence on pop culture and the media, but still, I do think that regarding Robert Pattinson, we've scratched the surface just enough to prove my point. Even though Robert has always respected his audience and the femininity around the Twilight franchise, most of the world didn't. Even to this day, he gets questions about the Twilight franchise while promoting new movies, and the questions still lean on the side of comical, lighthearted, amusing. Almost like an inside joke that's developing between the industry and Robert. A sort of, we know we didn't acknowledge you as a serious actor because of that chick flick you did, but come on, Did you expect us to? And though the rest of his career has been filled with award-worthy performances, interesting indie films, and art house projects that require incredible talent, Robert has continued to be overshadowed by other actors. Men who were deemed more worthy by other men of greatness. Men who didn't get stuck with a commercial blockbuster that was just so god-awful. Men who, when you look at the writing on the wall, men who were invited into the club of greatness because they never took a project as silly as Twilight. You still don't believe me? Well, let's have a think. Andrew Garfield's commercial film was Spider-Man, a certified boy movie with a hot girl that hasn't pissed men off yet, greatness permitted. Paul Mescal's commercial film was the recent release of Gladiator 2, certified boy movie with Roman Empire mentions, greatness permitted. Tom Holland was also Spider-Man, certified boy movie with also a hot girl who hasn't pissed men off yet, greatness permitted. Bill Skarsgård, horror movie icon, certified boy movies that may not be critically acclaimed because Hollywood refuses to accept horror as a legit genre, but still considered a great actor, greatness permitted. And of course, Timothée Chalamet, the Lisan Al-Gaib, certified boy movie with the same hot girl from the Tom Holland Spider-Man, and she still hasn't pissed anyone off, so greatness permitted. None of this is the fault of the actors. Chalamet, for example, has a roster of female-driven projects. His fan base is primarily women, but when I look back, I feel like culturally his greatness only became a topic of conversation when a ton of men started doing lookalike contests and proclaiming their love of Dune and Bob Dylan. And I don't say any of this to diminish the actors or compare them to Robert and say one is worse or more deserving than the other. It's to point out a pattern of behavior that we need to acknowledge and to celebrate an actor who has been shoved to the background for so long just because he was in what you would call a girl movie. If I had to pinpoint a temperature change for the general feeling around Pattinson, it would be when The Batman was released. Shocking, I know, that when Pattinson proved he could lead one of, if not the most certified boy movies ever, people started to acknowledge his greatness more openly. However, that change wasn't immediate. When he was first cast, reactions from certain people were less than thrilled, though director Matt Reeves defended Pattinson. The people who were excited, I knew it was because they knew Rob's work post-Twilight. The people who weren't excited, I knew it was because they didn't know Rob's work post-Twilight. Reeves is, of course, referring to the healthy, substantial resume Robert has curated since 2008. Movies like Good Time, The Lighthouse, The King, transformative roles where Pattinson never once plays the same thing twice. If you measure greatness based on versatility, Robert is in line to be one of the greatest of all time, at least from his generation. And even though he's had almost 20 years of brilliant on-screen performances, it was only when The Batman came out that the mainstream started paying attention to him as a legit great. Even as I was writing this, I was finding articles barely even convinced of his greatness. The Batman is one of my favorite films in recent years. Robert is at the top of his game in it. His voice work alone is mind-boggling. But I wasn't shocked when I saw him pull this off. I didn't sit back in awe because I couldn't believe it. I sat back in awe because no one else could. The conversations I was having after The Batman were consistently ones full of surprise, as if the ability to act just came out of nowhere. And that's when I started to realize people were just ignorant of Robert Pattinson's talent. He has been here the whole time. If you didn't know about it, then I have to say, I just don't think you've been watching. That's not necessarily your fault. Hollywood and pop culture have definitely watered him down over the years. But if you take away anything from this video, it's this. Stop letting others define your opinion on greatness. Research art yourself. Study performances and look deeper than the surface level reactions that film critics or influencers are putting out. Investigate the art. Meditate on it. Swim against the currents of the mainstream. And maybe, on occasion, try listening to teenage girls when they say something is gonna be good, because then you won't have to catch up to us when we run towards greatness without you.
I'll be your guide.
I have to become more.
Surrender to me!
But I'm you.
The nominees for leading actor in a motion picture.
Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and feel free to subscribe if you would like to. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Letterboxd, where you would have seen my Robert Pattinson spiel foreshadowed. Let me know down below if there are any other actors that you think are great and are being overlooked. I would love to take a peek into their life. And that's it from me. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye!